Jeff Apodaca.
Eric Strauss.
And welcome this week's show. You know, we always like to start the show off kind of talking about things that are going on.
Yeah.
And, you know, this week in the newspaper, New Mexico Early Childhood Fund could get oil power takeoff with all the oil and gas
because
revenue.
they love the revenue, but they hate the oil and gas.
Well, don't say
it
they.
Doesn't.
It's only a certain. But you know, one of the things I want to talk
It's
about.
it's basically your side.
No, but one of the things is Chevron, who is one of the big partners down in the Permian Basin, has announced that they're going to donate up to $1 a gallon to our schools for after-school activities,
Yes.
over a minimum of $5 million. And what amazed me is some of the environmental groups literally started attacking Chevron.
Well, then they should.
And they're trying to help our kids out, and we probably would have to agree on.
Okay, and how is Michelle Lujan Grisham going to pay for FREE free college? How's she paying for it? Oil and gas.
I guess.
So, but they want a carbon-free blah 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 by 2025, or it's just the hypocrisy never ceases to amaze.
Well, you know, so what I'm saying, and then before the show, we started talking about, and you were complaining about, not complaining, I should say.
I wasn't complaining.
But how you spent 5 hours at the
it was
and I had to remind you.
Time.
I had to remind you.
Foggate
I had to remind you. You chose that.
Well, no, I loved it. Hey, what are you saying? I loved it. It was the best time ever. But I will say, the coolest experience ever, I got to tell you, I've lived here since I was a little kid. I have never seen balloons fade into fog and then come out of it, and it was breathtaking. The photo ops were amazing.
We didn't go this weekend. We
went to everything. I was out there both mornings. So on Saturday I broadcasted live. On Sunday I kicked it off. So I was out there literally from start to finish on Sunday and on Saturday, and it's great for New Mexico, great for the economy, and it really is. It is a beautiful event. And we went to the Glow at Night.
Yeah,
went to the fireworks.
We usually go. The boys want to go to Special Shapes. So I think that's Thursday, Friday.
We bathed in the Bloom Fiesta this weekend.
You go, boy. I try. You know, to be honest
it's
with
great
you,
for the economy.
To be honest
great
with
for
you, and
New
I've talked to the mayor about this.
You need to make your way out there.
Well, I go every year, but to be honest with you, I talked to the mayor about it. Until they can fix traffic and
it's better.
Is it?
No, it is. 1,000,000%. My wife went out and she was shocked because she actually drove right up to the event. And they were running late. They made the whole mass ascension and left out of the house late.
Wow, that's
so
good.
That was really cool. No, it's flowing a lot better this year.
And I know they expanded the buses.
Every year it gets a little better. The park and ride and yeah.
By the way, they've been doing it for 40 years.
I know. Well, you would think they haven't. Well, that's government for you. Everybody wants the government involved in everything.
There you are, always complaining.
Always
complaining.
Well,
what else?
Okay, so Bernie Sanders.
Oh yeah.
Let me make you this commitment. If tomorrow I have a heart attack, I am not going to do Let's Meet in the Middle anymore.
Get out of here.
No, I'm serious.
Really?
Like, at some point, when you're...
I might give you a heart attack. By the way, I might give you a heart attack today.
Yeah. So, at some point, when you're at Bernie's age, and you want to run for the most strenuous, most powerful position in the world...
By the way,
there has to be a time where you say, look...
How strenuous is it when our president sits there and watches TV all day long and tweets about it?
Really? The hardest working man in America, by the way. But anyways,
how strenuous could that be?
No. Trump's the hardest working. But
I want that job.
Let's be honest. At what point, if you're Bernie Sanders in the campaign, would you donate to his campaign at this point?
Well, he raised more money last quarter than anybody else.
How?
You know, and one of the things I want to talk about on the Bernie Sanders front is, I posted last week on social media. I got kind of attacked by my progressive friends, but you know, again, we talked last week about universal health care, about the New Mexico Securities Act. We think that's a good opportunity. I favor that. I'm all for about self-insurance, but he finally came out and admitted that Bernie, his health plan, middle-class taxes will go up. And that's one of the things, I think he has a lot of good ideas, but that's one of the things I complained about.
Taxes always go up.
Well, that's one of the things I was...
When have they ever gone down?
Not in my life. Not in my lifetime.
Democrats in charge.
Oh, God.
That's what they always promise.
By the way, in my lifetime, Republicans have raised taxes and spent more money on the deficit at the national level than Democrats. Go look that up. Go look that up. I will. Next week, I'm going to bring it on the show.
Okay.
Anyway, this week's show.
Lowest unemployment rate in the Latino community.
And by the way, tell your president. And I don't disagree with that, but tell your president to tweet about that.
In the middle
instead
in
about
the
Beto.
History of our country.
Okay, have him tweet about that instead about Beto.
Okay.
Anyway, this week we're going to be talking about cannabis, hemp, legalization.
Marijuana, what it's all about, what the differences are.
And when we come back from commercial.
Lots of education.
When we come back from commercial, we're going to have a little history on why it's called marijuana.
I'm looking forward to it, actually.
We'll be right back.
In a time of a divided America, two people from different points of view sit down to talk about the problems, to talk about ideas, to talk about life, and to find common ground. It is now time for Let's Meet in the Middle with your hosts Eric Strauss and Jeff Apodaca.
It is kind of shocking sometimes. So
know,
welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Eric
I
Strauss, Jeff Apodaca.
I didn't think you realized we were back on the air.
I just did, actually. It is kind of disappointing on one level because people like listen in on our conversations sometimes and they think, well, where are they going to meet in the middle or how are they going to meet in the middle? And I think at the end of the day, if we're not having discussions from different points of view, that's the kind of foundation of our show.
Right.
And maybe sometimes we aren't going to meet in the middle, and that's okay. But we're always going to strive to find solutions and try to meet in the middle.
That's right. And
the effort will always be there.
And today,
I wanted to make that point.
For a few minutes before our guests come on, today we're talking about cannabis legalization, not legalization. We want to talk about hemp, and the reason I want, and I actually had a
You've drugged me into this show.
I've had a
drugged me into this show.
And the reason was, I think it's good timing because the governor's task force is supposed to be coming out with a report relatively soon on the game plan. We have two state senators that are going to be here that have been very involved, and so hopefully they'll give us some insight there. But also,
hold on. State senators, right?
Yes, but I think
one's a Republican, one's a
Democrat.
Democrat.
I think they came together last year to try and put a plan together for the state of New Mexico. So I think it's important to hear that. But also, just to be very clear, I also have a hemp processing company, and so I am in favor of a lot of this stuff we're going to talk about today.
I have to hear about this all the time, by the way, if you're out there and listening.
But the reason I want to talk about this is the farmers in New Mexico, which is going to be a great new crop for them. Harvesting is starting pretty much about now, and so I thought it'd be a good time to talk about it.
Just boots on the ground, I just want to be clear. There's already cannabis or hemp, or that's where I want you to go to this. So if guys like me who don't understand the difference between cannabis, hemp, marijuana, the drug, let's start there. I will let you talk
If you be quiet for about 6 minutes and let me talk and don't interrupt.
Fire on all cylinders.
Anyway, so let me give you some history real quick, and I hope our listeners, our viewers are talking about this. So first of all, cannabis was the first medicines in our country. Hemp, which has been illegal since the 30s, with cannabis, was our first medicines, our first ropes. The Constitution of the United States is written on hemp paper. So hemp was a product. And so it wasn't until the early 1900s that actually cannabis and hemp were used, and I went and looked this up to make sure I knew what I was talking about, was used by Bristol Myers and Eli Lilly for medicines. And it was the wealthy Europeans that used this medicines within pharmaceuticals. And as you know, in the early 1900s, we had over 900 Mexicans immigrate legally to this country, Chinese, and then you had the African Americans that couldn't afford these medicines and started using the same medicines that the pharmaceuticals were using, but they use it as raw material and they started smoking it for the first time ever.
Okay, and so just to backtrack, we're talking about hemp right now.
We're talking about cannabis and hemp. So we're talking. So we're talking about cannabis, and that's marijuana. I'm just giving you some history here. Okay. And I got 5 minutes left, so don't interrupt.
Okay, I'm trying to clarify. I'm not interrupting.
But what I'm just trying to explain to you. So cannabis was our first medicines. Pharmaceutical companies have used marijuana, cannabis, hemp, CBD, those medicines for hundreds of years. In the early 1900s, when immigrants and immigration. So there's a slide right now I want to show you. That's the difference between hemp and now they call it marijuana. But the actual plant is a cannabis plant. Marijuana gets you high because it has THC levels in it and it has CBD medical benefits in it. Hemp does not get you high because there's no THC. So think about it as non-alcoholic.
Well, there is THC.
There's not enough to think about it as non-alcoholic beer. That's what I tell people. And then if you can put up the other slide, look at this. I use this on the campaign trail. So hemp actually has about 50,000 uses and benefits, can create 16 different industries. And if you look over on the left side of the screen, or I guess the right side if you're looking at it, you can create seed, you can create feed, you can create CBD medicines, you can create manufacturing jobs. As we grow hemp in our industry, in our state, 12 different industries can come up, over 32,000 jobs in the state of New Mexico between farming, manufacture, and agriculture. And the difference is between cannabis, or marijuana, as they call it now, is that that plant can grow can basically get you high or have medical benefits. The hemp plant, two totally separate plants, by the way, two totally separate plants. They just look similar, have the same medicines in it, and you can make rope, you can make clothes, you can make different products in it.
I don't know why I find that I don't know why I find it funny.
Okay, but I want to give you some history.
I'm not
trying
to laugh like
and let me just show you. I just want to show you.
Go ahead.
These are all the different types of medicines that it can create. That's your flour, that's the biomass, which my company creates for you. But these are the oils and the benefits, and they're medical benefits for everybody. Look, you've heard the story. I've taken 3 or 4 Vicodin a day for my back pain. I switched to CBD oils.
It's because you're old, by the way.
Maybe, but I switched to CBD oils, and I haven't taken a Vicodin in 3 or 4 years. But I want to make another point before we have to go to commercial. I want to make another point.
All right.
Cannabis was our first medicines, because we're going to talk about legalization, and I want to make this very clear. The pharmaceutical companies in the early 20s lobbied to make cannabis illegal to the general public because poor people, which were mostly minorities,
could grow it on their own
and smoke it on their own for the same medical benefits instead of going through the processing plant. And in 1937, the federal government changed it to the Marijuana Tax Medical Act. Okay. And by the way, just so you'll know, there's no Spanish word named for marijuana. It was a made-up word. Okay, it was always called cannabis. They realized they had to make it ethnic. So the federal government in 1937 changed it and made up the word marijuana.
Come on, they had to get it from like
it
colloquialism.
It is not a Spanish word. Vierda means weed. Everybody thinks marijuana means weed in Spanish. It's just not true. So what I'm saying is,
guess who owns the patent? Because of verde, like green,
like
right?
green,
okay.
like or weed.
Yeah.
Guess what? Guess who holds the patent to medicines with cannabis and hemp?
Oh.
Federal government.
Yeah.
So what I'm just saying is we're going to talk today with 2 state senators about legalization. What I'm saying is everybody gets into the conversation about legalization about, oh, it's a drug to get high. I get that concern. Okay, my point is the medicines and the industries it can create will benefit New Mexico and our health benefits.
Okay, but for the average guy like me listening out there who has something called common sense, because I know a lot of our viewers do, okay, this is where I think, and this is where I kind of feel for you a bit, because I get where you're going with the legalization. Like, why does marijuana get lumped in with hemp and no one can separate cannabis in their mind? Let's talk about that when we come back.
Well, we will. We'll talk about that because I think part of it was the...
Because I got all these friends with medical cards, and they don't need the pot for the medical.
Well, we could talk about
that.
But again, hemp got lumped into that, so we'll talk more about that. But anyway, I want to thank our sponsors too, because we have Indigo Mortgage and Ryan Sowenback. We're also on Facebook Live, so you can follow us at Let's Meet in the Middle.
And if you mention Let's Meet in the Middle, Ryan Sowenback, you get extra discounts, by the way.
Anyway, so we'll be back right after this, and let's get going.
Let's meet in the middle.
I'm Ben Lucero, president and owner of Indigo Mortgage. We are a locally owned and operated mortgage company right here in New Mexico. This means your loan officers and processors are right here to serve you. Indigo Mortgage offers better rates and terms than that of big banks and out-of-state lenders. Our mortgage divisions include residential, commercial, construction, reverse mortgages, and VA mortgage loans. Let us serve you with an exemplary level of care. Indigo Mortgage, because nobody cares more about your mortgage loan.
Ryan Sewing and Vacuum is New Mexico's #1 brother dealer. Brother's new Luminaire has a built-in projection system which helps with quilting, embroidering, and sewing. Ryan's has a variety of machines to satisfy quilters, sewers, embroiders, and long armors. We offer the finest vacuums like Miele, Riccar, and Lindhaus. Check out our fantastic selection of fabrics and sewing furniture. We also offer classes, repair, and financing. Drop by our store in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Ryan Sewing and Vacuum, serving New Mexico for 37 years.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Joining us now is Senator Mark Moores and Senator Jerry Ortiz-Pino. This is your second, so see, it wasn't that bad the first time because you came back on, right?
Well, because I had to rescue him all the time because you were yelling at him.
I was not.
I know. He gets all mad when I say stuff like that, so thank you guys for coming back on.
I figured I must have lost the argument, otherwise he wouldn't have let me invite me back.
No, there's no losing or winning on this show. Hopefully we just bring ideas to the table and let the audience, on some level, the audience needs to sort it out too.
Well, and don't forget,
you know
don't forget, we're live on Facebook. We're live on Facebook,
Yep.
so you can chime in on Facebook. We'll try and during there I try and answer questions. And thank both of you for coming in. And the reason is because you know, Senator, you've been an advocate of legalization. We've talked many times about it. Mark has actually opposed it for a long time, but last session stepped up with a bunch of the Republicans and came together and worked a bill together, both in the House and the Senate. Somehow we ran out of time.
But
we'll talk about that.
So part of the feeling is, I want to start with you, Mark, is it just that you know it's coming, so let's get a hold of it? Like, there's no preventing, because clearly you guys don't have majority in House or Senate, so you know it's going to happen. Was the goal on the Republican side to say it's going to happen, let's just damage control this thing and get as much control around it as we can?
Absolutely, that was a big part of the argument. And you know, philosophically, I think a lot of people in the country have changed over the last number of years too. You know, I think there's more of a libertarian feeling that if people want to smoke pot, great. I'm not one of those guys. I don't really care for it. I don't want it in society. It is happening. I think we're up to 10 or 11 states have legalized it now, including California, entire West Coast, from California all the way to Oregon, Washington, Alaska, Hawaii. Sure, I mean, in Canada is now legalized. The entire country in Canada. So when we sat down, some of us in our caucus, in the Republican caucus, we were looking, okay, this is going to happen. Well, we might not be happy about it. We might, you know, but, you know, it's going to happen. What do we do to try to come together and come into the middle? How do we protect children? How do we reduce the negative social impact that marijuana has? Let's be honest, Eric. Right now, in the state of New Mexico, 1 out of 20 adults has a medical card. You made a comment earlier about, you know, they're going through the system, they're getting a card. There are people who need it for medical reasons. We know one right here in front of us. But we know a lot of people are gaming it. And so people are using it, it's not being taxed, it's not being regulated. And so we really sat down as a caucus, a couple of us, 3 or 4 of us, and said, what do we need to do? We sat down with Gerald years ago. He's challenged me a number of years ago saying, you know, it's going to happen. How can you participate in this process? So we came together with a bipartisan effort, and we actually introduced a piece of legislation that would have legalized, would have, we felt, taken control of the negative consequences, the law enforcement, the children use, and how do we spend those resources back to behavioral health and addiction. And so we're trying to minimize. Now, it is going to have a negative social impact. There's no question about it. It's going to have a negative impact on law enforcement. How do we minimize that and let people have the liberty to smoke marijuana if they so choose?
Well, let me ask you, on the bill that passed both the House and got to the Senate, I know there somehow ran out of time, we didn't get a vote on it. It sounded like, Mark, you guys had 9 Republicans supporting it. I know a lot of the conservative Democrats had questions about it, but they were supporting it. Senator, I mean, did you think you guys had the votes last year? With the bill that came out of the House, were you happy with it? Would you have voted for it?
I would have voted for that bill on the floor. It never reached the floor because the Finance Committee never had a hearing.
Correct.
And I think, you know, the reality is chairmen have a great deal of influence over legislative process. And if a chairman just doesn't schedule a hearing, it doesn't mean it ran out of time, because there were a lot of other bills.
Well, I just laughed because that was the excuse they gave.
That's a euphemism for killing things.
Exactly.
In Santa Fe.
Exactly.
But there is still opposition. Some of the most powerful of the Democrats are opposed to it. This is a 30-day session. We have half the amount of time we did last time, but hopefully we'll get a faster start on it. And if the governor really, and she seems to be intent on making sure that this gets treated in the session, I think we'll get a vote. Now, when it comes to the floor, if there really are 9 Republicans in support of it, it will pass, because there are only about 5 Democrats that are opposed to it.
Well, let's talk about that, because the governor put a task force together, and I know you guys are not on the task force. We asked some of the members from the task force to be here. Schedule-wise, they couldn't be here, but we appreciate you guys being here. It sounds like, and I've talked to Pat Davis, I've talked to Javier, Representative Martinez, about the task force. Again, you guys aren't on the task force. I just want to hear what you've heard. There seems to be the task force a little torn, because some of them, mostly the Republicans, are frustrated that the task force didn't start with the bill that was compromised, that everybody agreed to, and they kind of started from scratch.
They went opposite. They went opposite.
Mark, I'll start with you. Can you give me some insight on that?
I agree with that. There's a political process in Santa Fe to get a bill passed. And we had something that was pretty close, and I think they went off and started on a different tangents. Instead of actually sitting down and figuring, what do we need to do to get this past this hurdle, Senate Finance, and address the concerns that majority on Senate Finance, I do not believe we'll vote for this bill and vote for it right now unless their issues are addressed. And a lot of them were about law enforcement and how we're spending the money and what the tax rate is going to be. So I think addressing those concerns instead of starting over from scratch would have been a much better use of time.
It seemed like that task force to me, just as I'm not
It
as...
was a PR stunt.
It was like, it felt like it went a 180 from where you guys were. I didn't get the
what's your
task force.
take on the
Go
task
ahead.
force?
Well, I think the big difference was the bill, as it came over from the House last year, had the Republican version of who's going to get to sell it.
Right.
And it was the state stores. And that was a very controversial aspect. There were a lot of producers who were opposed to that. And I think they persuaded the task force to go in another direction. So what they really did was to start with the bill as it was introduced in the House without that addition. But I think it has some of the other elements that your bill had.
But we haven't seen the
Yeah.
report.
Well, you know,
haven't
it's
seen it
funny
either.
because I'm very, you and I are dear friends, and I'm very proud to say Mark's our
Fellow Lobo.
fellow Lobo, and my state senator, by the way.
Yeah.
But Mark and their attorney who have drafted this, when I saw the bill, you probably remember this. I
do.
said, "What are you guys thinking about? You've been giving it to the government to run. What are you talking about?" I mean,
So
here
you don't like state
I don't like state
control,
I
state
would-
stores,
and Mark and I had a long
regulation.
conversation about,
Yeah.
Jeff, I'd rather have it get done this way than not getting it passed. You did tell me that,
Yep.
than not getting it passed. But I was like, wait a minute. My libertarian Republican friends are against big government, and now here you're going to say government's going to run it. My concern is, as two state senators, let's say it ends up that way, and we had
With the states.
with the state running the program, and we had a beer after the session, and we talked a little bit about it. But I want the viewers to understand, from your guys' perspective, when they say state-run program, clarify what your vision is on that, because the bill never clarified me on that.
The state is only the retail sales. So the biggest, the most clear example would be the liquor industry in states such as Utah, New Hampshire. In fact, some of the Canadian provinces right now are doing this model where state-run retail. So not the manufacturer, not the productions, but this the outlets. So that when you go to New Hampshire, for instance, they have live free or die on their license plate, a conservative state, Republican state. That's how they sell alcohol there. So when we were looking around as a caucus, how do you minimize the negative impacts of a new drug, a legalized drug, but still provide people with the liberty to use it on an individual basis? We felt that the state-run retail outlet, so that way you can control where it goes, you can control better how it gets to minors or prevent it from going to minors, and control that revenue so it can then go to law enforcement, behavioral health
Like
care.
I get
Like
all
the
that,
e-cigs, but
no,
look
hold
at
on. But
hold on.
I get all that.
But-
But who then runs it? Are they state employees? Did the state run it?
Okay, but,
Yes,
but look at the e-cigs. The e-cigs got out of control. Everybody and their grandmother opened up a e-cig. Do you think kids aren't rolling in there and buying it even though they're not old enough to buy the, right? The e-cigs are like rampant. And then they're selling those little marijuana e-cigs where you can literally vape THC. And and when it's that much of an open market, especially with a drug like this, it's like you can't go to Walgreens and buy whatever prescription you want. It's all regulated, right?
And that's the advantage of a state-owned store, is that you now control what the products are also going out, and you can control that. And so you can have, last thing we don't want is a Joe the Camel situation or the e-cig situation,
So, Jerry,
with very good marketing guys pushing us out towards kids.
I want your perspective, because you've been an advocate of legalization for a long time. When that came, and if it had got to the floor,
I had told them that I could support that. To me, that's not as crucial as the other things that the bill would have done.
Right.
And the bill had, I thought, some real strong positive things that made it very attractive for me to support. There's some logistic problems. One of the big problems with having the state be the marketing of the marijuana is that it's still illegal at the federal level. So you basically have state employees breaking federal law.
Breaking federal
And
law.
that's, apparently the feds aren't enforcing those laws very, and I think in the next few years we'll finally see some movement at the federal, hopefully some movement.
it sounds that way.
But that was one of the dilemmas that it posed. The other thing is that some of the producers, and this isn't a concern I have, I thought it was fine to do that, But some of the producers have said, well, if the state is buying it from us, they're going to regulate how much we can make. And basically, if you're the only retail outlet that your wholesale production has, you can dictate the price. And so they were worried about
Makes
that.
sense.
Well, and then
that's a
and I
concern.
talked to a lot of the cannabis retail companies, and that was one of their biggest concerns. And then my biggest concern was, okay, who gets the state contracts? Who's the supplier? We have 34. There's that little smile. Because we know. Because look at
it's
them
a great conversation
because we knew where it was going to go.
Well, Jared and I had this conversation
Who's giving
before.
the most money?
Now we're talking about how to do it and who's going to make the money.
Right.
Not if we're going to do it. And so that is a dynamic shift. And this is New Mexico politics. And we've seen the corruption in New Mexico in a lot of different industries.
Right.
If you want to see corruption, look at the liquor industry. So to me, having a state-run store actually allows us to have some sunshine on it. Open Meetings Act, Procurement Code, Ethics Commission, all those things help protect New Mexico and taxpayers and have an open system are in place if we have a state-run store, as opposed to the corruption we have seen time and again in the state of New Mexico.
Now, the alternative, the other way, if you don't go through a state-run store with some of the dilemmas that it creates, you still have to have strong state, in which we haven't had enough in the medical, I'm afraid.
I agree.
Oversight and regulation and people on site checking
and
to
that's
make sure.
what California is wrestling with, people just going up in the mountains and growing their own crops.
Well, but hold on. But we have
no,
that.
seriously,
But let me.
That's a big
But that's
concern.
going on today. Today, here's an example. Today, with the medical program, you can apply for a PPL, personal production license, which means I can produce it myself, and I believe the number's 14 plants. We have 80,000 patients, roughly. We have over 9,000 PPLs. You look at Arizona, which has 150 patients and 3 million people living there, they have less than 1,000 PPLs. And so one of the things,
that's because New Mexicans work the system.
No, but one of the things I would, and a lot of friends of mine that are on the PPL side or medical benefits of it, I'm totally against PPLs because every law enforcement person you talk to says, look, 80% of those PPLs are drug dealers that have 800 plants.
You think?
And so,
and here's the problem: if we legalize recreational use, you can grow your own. You don't have to have a PPL or anything.
Right.
It's just because it's the medical program that you have to get a special license. But once it's legalized, if Mark wants to grow, 10 plants in his backyard, it'll be legal.
But that's my point, though. But can't you kind of control that? 6 plants per home, 6 plants per residence, things like that. You can create zones like Colorado has. There's areas in Colorado.
You can say that on paper, but unless you have some way of
This thing
enforcing
is.
it.
And actually, the bill, the final version of the bill had no personal growth because talking to law enforcement from other states, a lot of the black market that they're experiencing is coming from the personal growth, and you can't control that. So our bill actually did not have
That is
personal
one
growth.
point I liked about the bill.
I want to throw this out just because the big talk is opioid addiction, opioid crisis. Are we sitting here as adults saying that marijuana is not addictive?
Every expert I've talked to, every law enforcement does not think marijuana is the addictive drug. In fact, every law enforcement tells me opiates are the gateway drug to other serious
Whatever people are
things.
saying, are we saying that you guys don't know personally people who are addicted to marijuana?
I know people who are psychologically addicted, and I think
Absolutely,
you can be psychologically
They're dependent,
good
and
word.
that's addiction.
Yeah.
I mean, we're fooling ourselves. The gambling, legalized gambling, gambling addicts.
Look,
Alcohol,
there's no question.
alcoholics.
You and I agree.
Marijuana, why are we not having this conversation that absolutely people are going to be addicted to marijuana?
You and I agree marijuana is bad. I agree. I argue it's bad. Now, how do we minimize that bad as a public issue? That's where I am right now. I don't like marijuana. I don't want my kids having marijuana. I don't want anyone I know having marijuana, but it's there. How do we minimize that negative social impact in our state?
And I think one of the best ways is to take the profit out of the black market marijuana. And that's where legalization comes in. And we lose that if we...
And the senator's right. We have, you talk to the experts, you talk to law enforcement, we have one of the highest black market marijuana in the state. I mean, in the country. So law enforcement is having to deal with this, and it goes right back to imprisonment, goes right back to our court systems. It goes right back to what's clogging down the system on violent criminals and things like that we've talked
Okay,
about.
I'm going to give you this quote from Drew
We have 30
Pinsky,
seconds, and then we can bring it back.
working with addicts. He goes, it would be malpractice to say that cannabis isn't addictive. Anybody who's experienced it, actually been addicted to it, knows how profound that addiction is. We'll take that up in our next segment. I still don't want to give marijuana this free pass. And Senator Ortiz-Pino, I want to ask you, like, just personally, what your feelings are on marijuana when we come back.
When we come back, we'll be right after that. So thank you so much for Indigo Mortgage and Ryan Sohenbach. We'll be back right after this.
Ryan Sewing and Vacuum is New Mexico's #1 brother dealer. Brother's new Luminaire has a built-in projection system which helps with quilting, embroidering, and sewing. Ryan's has a variety of machines to satisfy quilters, sewers, embroiders, and long armors. We offer the finest vacuums like Miele, Ricard, and Lindhaus. Check out our fantastic selection of fabrics and sewing furniture. We also offer classes, repair, and financing. Drop by our store in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Ryan Sewing and Vacuum, serving New Mexico for 37 years.
I'm Ben Lucero, president and owner of Indigo Mortgage. We are a locally owned and operated mortgage company right here in New Mexico. This means your loan officers and processors are right here to serve you. Indigo Mortgage offers better rates and terms than that of big banks and out-of-state lenders. Our mortgage divisions include residential, commercial, construction, reverse mortgages, and VA mortgage loans. Let us serve you with an exemplary level of care. Indigo Mortgage, because nobody cares more about your mortgage loan.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Joining us is Senator Jerry Ortiz-Pino and Mark Moores, Republican, Democrat. It's what really the foundation of the show is.
Three out of four of the panel today kind of want to control.
I think Mark's in my camp, but he's like me at some point. But this is what I don't understand. We want to. How many guns are in America?
No, but
and they want to hold on.
You always bring it back to guns, by the way.
Hold on. And they want to control and stop those.
Okay, we'll have that show later.
Okay, but
our point is,
look,
let
me make the logical segue here.
Okay, hurry up.
And what it feels like as adults, we're just like, the kids are all using it. Let's throw up our arms and legalize it, so at least we can control it.
But
you know,
that's okay.
But do you see the two sides?
Hold on, let's go back to the very first segment, and I want to talk a little bit about this. The first segment was our first medicines. There's medical benefits. There's medical benefits for
about that.
And what I'm saying is, New Mexico. Okay, but New Mexico has some of the largest black market drug issues here because of the black market, and so that's where. And again, you look at the support. Mark had mentioned it earlier. There's over 60% of New Mexicans that support this. 78% of the Dems. There's only 32% that don't support this. So I think we all agree that. And I talk to high school teachers, and you're a high school teacher. They see it every day, and I told, listen to you. You see it every day. So the kids that are going to do it are already doing it. When you go to Colorado, when you go to other states that have legalized it and control it and put money towards awareness, they're actually
marijuana use.
They're actually seeing it go down. That is not true.
That is true.
That is not true.
That is absolutely true.
Well, that's totally different from the data we got from the Colorado.
That is not true.
Yeah, because they're smoking the data. I'm telling you, I pulled up study after study on this. I did a whole 3 hours on this thing.
Hold on. Two episodes ago, you talked about how you don't trust numbers and statistics, and now you're going to believe that number?
You're telling me it's not true, and I read that statistic.
I want to see
So,
that report.
okay, but hold on. You always get hurt when people throw out, and then you're calling me a liar?
No.
Okay,
but
that's what you get all hurt about.
No, I'm
right?
just saying.
I'm saying. I want to jump into this little thing right
please
now.
do.
The issue, I have a daughter who's now 22, just graduated college. So she was in high school when I was in the Senate. And it was easier for her friends and her to get marijuana than it was to get alcohol at that age. And I'm sure it was when I lived in a state that was at drinking age was 21.
So just
it was
say
hard
that when you legalize too.
So the point is, how do we control that, minimize it? And you're absolutely right. I do not want kids. I don't want adults using it either. But having prohibition, just like alcohol back in the 30s, I'm watching Boardwalk Empire right now on HBO. It did not work, and it caused greater problems. Than we saw that same thing with marijuana. And how do we take that step back and try to put that genie back in the bottle, or that smoke back in the pipe? I don't know what kind of euphemism I should use.
Or the marijuana back in the bong.
There you go.
Blah, blah, blah.
That's what we really have to address ourselves as a public policy issue. Someone who doesn't support marijuana usage but knows it's here, and how do we minimize it? And that's where I'm coming from.
I think the big thing that prohibition of marijuana has done is sent the two big things. sent a lot of kids and a lot of adults to jail and ruined their lives in terms of jobs that they can get later on or scholarships that they've lost, all of that. And it's made incredible profits for criminals.
Correct.
That I can agree with you on. But on the same token, if we're going to have some honest conversation around this drug, we know, why are they trying to say, and here's my big issue, kids think marijuana is healthy in part because of its medicinal purposes and uses. And I am sorry, at the end of the day, study after study, UNM did a 16-year study on marijuana use. They found manic depression. They found bipolar disorder on users, lack of motivation. I mean, we have to be honest about this. If you have lifelong marijuana users, and I know you guys have friends that probably do, they don't deal well with space unless they're stoned. And that's real.
Well,
and I've seen it.
But hold on.
I've seen it, and it's just like a functioning alcoholic.
What the experts will tell you is at some point they needed some type of structure, some type of medication, didn't get that medication, and went down that road because for self-treatment, for self-medication.
At some point, it's self-medication because things aren't working out in their life, mom and dad get a divorce. There's that element too. And we're sitting here trying to pretend like there's not this dark side to marijuana. It's all just about the money and the medicinal. And the young people are buying into this. They will try pot, and especially if it gets legal, and okay, look, there's hurdles right now. And they may not be very big, but there are. And at some point, if we remove those hurdles and say that a kid that most likely wouldn't have tried pot, now that the hurdles are gone, they're going to try pot.
I think we can create more strict hurdles legalizing it and controlling it than in today's black market.
And I would rather, as again a father of a 20-something-year-old,
Yeah.
I would rather, if she chooses to smoke marijuana, buy it from a state-run store than from some guy on the street, so she could address those issues could be addressed through education, through pamphlets.
Or at least educating these young people that it's not this fun and games, just like alcohol.
But hold on, but Colorado, right? I'm just going back to Colorado because when I was running for governor, I spent time with Hickenlooper and his committee for 2 days.
And Hickenlooper was opposed to it.
And Hickenlooper was opposed to it, and he even says today I was wrong. They put 25% of those resources towards education and rehab drug programs. And I don't care what you say, I'm going to go get my research and your research.
Yeah.
I have looked at research that showed marijuana usage under 21 actually down in Colorado versus it going up.
How?
Because you can't buy it there.
Yeah.
You can't use it there. But what I'm saying is we have
You can't buy pot in Colorado?
No, at under 21 you're not supposed
Well,
to.
I know, but come on.
But again, it goes back.
You can't buy alcohol. Do you think the kids are using alcohol?
Hold on, we just talked about the roadblocks are there. But we just talked about legalizing it, we can create more roadblocks. So we have two guests here. We can argue in the next segment together. Let's make sure that we're getting these guys.
Go ahead, Senator RP.
I think what you said is true. There are people who become dependent on it. They use it compulsively.
Well, why don't we call it addicted to it? Like,
but my point is they would become addicted to something else.
I think because scientifically there's a term,
there
the term
is
addiction
means
chemically addicted.
Okay.
And this means they find the relaxation they get, they find the ability to deal with anxiety that they get from it as calming and as helpful, and so they come home at the end of the day after a day of work and they start doing a joint or whatever.
Yeah.
There is that but that's the case with alcohol as well. There are people who are absolutely dependent on it, but there are so many more people who can have a drink before dinner, have dinner, go to bed, and never have to worry about it.
Well, and one of the things we haven't talked about, and I want to, is, look, let's be very frank. A third of our people that are in our private prisons making money are in there for marijuana possession, very frankly, mostly minorities. And so we have criminalized it. When you talk to police officers, they want this off their plate. Yeah. Now, the only police officers that I have found that want to kind of keep it around are detectives, because they actually use that for the drug dealers. But again, you're imprisoning. Think about the $270 million that we could put into rehab programs that you're talking about if we decriminalized it and got them out of private prisons. We haven't even discussed that, and that's an issue.
We're still not addressing the fact that this drug has a very dark side to it, as does alcohol. But look, I am telling you, talk to some young people.
Meth, Opiates,
dark
prescription
side.
drugs,
We all agree that it has a dark.
They have a much more.
Okay, but it's a
darker
dark side, and we all can see it,
And
and,
they're all
we're not
legal.
having this honest
Right, those are all
conversation
legal.
about
And
that.
they're all
And,
illegal.
and
Yes.
Eric, actually, I think we are addressing. We all, in my statements, I said marijuana is bad. I don't want it. How do we minimize the negative social impacts? That's an acknowledgement that it is not good.
Right.
But it's how do we make it less
But
evil,
not- and-
or not evil? It's
and-
too strong a word.
And not
but-
everybody who uses marijuana is addicted to it, it has bad repercussions in their lives. Most people, I think, can use it in a limited fashion.
man.
Half the people never want to use it, just like alcohol.
Yeah.
And they won't. If you legalize it or not, they're not going to use it.
Yeah.
But for people who want to relax at the end of the day with a joint or with a brownie or however they're taking it, I'm not sure we gain much by making them criminals.
Well, and I want to say something, is I never supported legalization because, oh, we're going to see $200 million of tax revenue. That's a drop in the bucket, and we have an $8 billion cash flow coming in from oil and gas. My point is, we have a huge black market. A third of the people in our state prisons are from marijuana possession, mostly minorities. If we put those resources towards education, legalize it and control it, and I like your create more barriers that now that it's legalized and protect it, we can look at other states and other models that have been very, very successful at it. And they had their hiccups, but we can stop some of that.
But then, when we look at the state-run stores, you had big pushback against that, and I'm going to say,
Actually, he's kind of sold me a little bit now.
All right, all right.
Both of us.
I got to sell 42
Senator,
other
when you
legislators.
agree-
We're there.
willing to vote for
You
it
know,
last
because when, we haven't talked about that part, but I would think Jerry would be against it. Jerry was supporting that, and then we've talked, and then after this little thing, I'm favoring it now more to kind of get it through. And after we talked, I did look at some of the states on their alcohol programs, because I have a huge problem with our alcohol license program in our state. I think it's very, I don't want to say corrupt, but it's very one-sided.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and I think as legislators, you look at some of the bills we have to deal with every year. We're dealing with multitudes of alcohol legal or alcohol licensing bills. After 80
Right.
years of legalized alcohol, we still do a poor job of regulating the state of New
Now let me
Mexico.
ask you, as legislators, if you guys do pass it through, and the governor has said she would sign it if it got through, we would be only the third state that passed it via legislatively. Clearly, we all favor that, but are you guys concerned? The reason I'm always concerned about something like that is you get another governor and other legislators in there, and they change it back 4 years later, and private industry has invested millions of dollars into this. Is that a concern, or would you rather have it on the
That's a
ballot?
concern in any business. And,
Right.
I mean, we
Yeah,
can change. The laws can be changed anytime, anywhere. And this was actually when my journey on this process started. Was Senator Ortiz-Pino has run constitutional amendments to put it in our Constitution, and I said at that time I would not support that. And he challenged me. Okay, if you won't support this, what would you do? And that's really what started this internal conversation within our caucus with a few of us saying, what can we do? And I want to applaud publicly Gerald Ortiz-Pino, Senator Ortiz-Pino, for challenging us. Okay, it's coming. You guys want to help us do this? What would it take?
So I want to just throw some things out, because I want to make sure I make this point pretty clear, because it feels like we're not going in with our eyes wide open on this thing. A recent,
think we all would disagree with you,
recent Northwestern University study found that marijuana users have abnormal brain structure, poor memory. Chronic marijuana abuse may lead to brain changes resembling schizophrenia. The study also reported that the younger the person starts using marijuana, the worse the effects become. And all of they've been saying, but all the young people talk to teenagers, and they all believe because you can make rope out of it, because they don't understand the
Not
difference.
marijuana,
Hold on. I'm telling you, I've worked with a lot more teenagers than anybody here at the table.
That's probably true.
That's very true. And they believe it's healthy. They believe that it's an innocent drug. And in part, when we legalize recreational marijuana, as bad as it is already, how come we're not having the honest conversation that it's going to get worse with young people?
But I think we have had that conversation, and I think what we're basically saying here is we want to create those roadblocks where young people don't use that. Look, you would have those same studies, whether it's prescription drugs, whether it's alcohol, anything in that developing brain is bad for anybody. I mean, we talked about it on our last show on teen suicides and mental health, that we're putting too many drugs into our small kids, young kids.
Absolutely.
Northwestern is
But
in Illinois.
But we want,
Illinois has not legalized. The people they're studying are people that are getting it through the black market, not through the legal market.
But still, the legal market right now, if you look at the emergency rooms in Colorado, people are doing edibles. They're vaping this stuff, and it's more potent than ever before. They're having psychological breaks. They're going into emergency rooms, checking in. I mean, we're not having this honest conversation.
Let's go back. The vaping's a whole different issue. The vaping, it's a whole different cartridge issue and burning your lungs because of how they're doing it. So that's one thing. And killing themselves. And I'm against vaping, anything, by the way. But the stuff you're talking about, the edibles, I will agree with this, and Governor Hickenlooper agreed with me. Hold on. The first 2 years, they had major issues. They have solved those issues, they have repackaged those issues, and they've solved many of those issues that you're bringing up. Now, Senators, we have 1 minute left.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that you guys get everything. We're here. We really appreciate you guys being here. Moving forward, do you feel the task force is going to bring a plan that we think is going to pass this legislature? Do you think it's going to be, fast-tracked? What are you guys hearing? What are you guys hearing?
I think if they had focused on the objections that were there with some of the key legislators that were the final obstacles, we could have kind of passed. But by starting from scratch, I think it made the journey a little bit longer. So I'm not optimistic for the 30-day session. If they had stayed focused on what it would have taken to get something passed, I think we could have gotten there.
Senator?
Well, I mean, I think the key is that it is a 30-day session. And whatever they propose is going to get changed.
Right.
I mean, nothing makes it through the legislative process without getting changed. So even if we stick state store, if they don't want state stores and we stick them back in, I'm not sure that increases or decreases.
Well, I can tell you right now.
The governor wanted two things for sure, and that is protect the medical marijuana program and find some way to avoid overpricing it by taxing it so heavily that you keep the black market robust.
Well, there's a couple things. One, I think we've lost some Democrats through this process. Sounds like we've lost some Republicans through this process. So anyway, Senators, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate an important topic, and good luck next year on the session.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
Ryan Sewing and Vacuum is New Mexico's #1 brother dealer. Brother's new Luminaire has a built-in projection system which helps with quilting, embroidering, and sewing. Ryan's has a variety of machines to satisfy quilters, sewers, embroiders, and long armors. We offer the finest vacuums like Miele, Riccar, and Lindhaus. Check out our fantastic selection of fabrics and sewing furniture. We also offer classes, repair, and financing. Drop by our store in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Ryan Sewing and Vacuum, serving New Mexico for 37 years.
I'm Ben Lucero, president and owner of Indigo Mortgage. We are a locally owned and operated mortgage company right here in New Mexico. This means your loan officers and processors are right here to serve you. Indigo Mortgage offers better rates and terms than that of big banks and out-of-state lenders. Our mortgage divisions include residential, commercial, construction, reverse mortgages, and VA mortgage loans. Let us serve you with an exemplary level of care. Indigo Mortgage, because nobody cares more about your mortgage loan.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Wow, I got to take a breath.
Well, and again, I don't know if we ever met in the middle. Look, I think that no.
Okay, so you make some valid points on the criminalization. I don't think somebody should be sitting in jail over a dime bag or whatever. I get it. So I get that part of it. My whole rub throughout this show has been the fact that we're not addressing with our young people the absolute. It's like there's this comic, feel-good impression of marijuana.
See, I disagree.
Well, I'm just telling you,
okay,
I hang out with young people.
I understand that, but
and
hold on. Whether it
there
was,
is this
but hold on,
Cheech and Chong,
but whether
and all the,
Cheech
all
and
that
Chong
stuff.
But hold on, all that stuff's been around since the 70s.
I know,
when I
that's
was in
what
high
I'm
school.
telling you.
So, but my point is what you don't listen to is.
No, I've been listening.
No, is that other states, other programs, and our two senators even said that legalizing it. And I'm very proud of Senator Mark because by legalizing, you can create roadblocks. And he made a very good point about saying it's harder for my kid to get alcohol than it is marijuana today, right? And that's the point. And so as we talked about
that, I agree with.
But that's what I'm saying. So,
but on the
and I understand you're worried about the. I understand, but I talk to middle school and high school teachers that are dealing with it. Yes, middle school kids that are dealing with marijuana use right now. I said, but listen to yourselves. You're talking about marijuana use right now. It's already rampant. It's already happening. So bring it out of the shadows like we did alcohol, like we talked about prohibition didn't work, and let's basically create those roadblocks, control it, and legalize it.
While at the same time having honest conversations about the dangerous, addictive, psychoactive nature of this drug.
And I think we all agree with that.
No, they don't.
Yes, we did. We talked
because
about that.
Even Senator
No,
Ortiz
we
Pino's
talked
like,
about that.
if you want to come home and smoke a joint, I get that.
He's talking that as adults. We
okay,
all
but-
agree. When you read your study,
Hold on.
both senators. No, I'm going to be honest with you because we can
Okay.
go back and watch the replay. Both senators agreed with you. We all agreed with your statement. We all agreed that the research. Yes, we all agreed with that. Absolutely. So my point is of today's show.
Yeah.
Is we have a Democrat and Republican senator, and Jerry Ortiz Pino, the senator, has been pushing for legalization for at least 10 years that I'm aware of.
He's been.
And Mark was pretty much against it. Mark
banging that drum
Mark
a
is
while.
my state senator in my district. When they came forward with the state run, and I was really, really against state run, and you may remember Blair Dunn, who's been on our show a couple of times.
Yep.
He's actually one of the people that helped write the bill,
Yeah.
a libertarian, and I called both of them and said, what are you guys doing? Now, after talking to the senators and then having Senator Ortiz Pino agree to that, that was a meet in the middle compromise.
And
that all of a
what
sudden,
happened to that?
well, no. By the way, I think it was a political ploy to keep it in the. And I hope I'm wrong. I just think there's certain candidates or certain elected officials, kind of like immigration. They don't want this legalized anytime soon because they want to keep running on it. They want to keep this in the conversation, right? Because once it gets legalized, then it's.
So, do you think it helps or hurts Grisham to get it legal?
I think it would help her because I think 60% of New Mexicans want it, but I think some people are going to use it for political gain. Either way, I mean, we talked about it earlier. I've heard from both Democrats and Republicans. There are people within the task force that aren't looked favorably between Republicans and Democrats. So I think some of I believe it was 9. They had 9 Republicans supporting that bill last year. There's 8 conservative Democrats in the Senate. They had at least 4 supporting that bill, so they had the votes. If it had gone on the floor last year,
Well, and Senator Ortiz said they had the votes.
they had the votes.
They had the
So
votes.
if it had gone on the floor last year, they would have passed it and it would be legalized today. And again, your concerns, I totally get it. I think we all understand. I'm very aware. And by the way, that UNM research piece is continuing going. So it's a long-term research. So I agree with you. But
And just
marijuana,
from- here's my
is
biggest
rampant
rub.
today.
But here's my biggest rub. Every one of my friends that does it all the time turned out, they're different people. And I've had Governor Johnson, Gary Johnson.
Okay, but
I had him on my show, and he's a different guy. Like, that's not the same guy. Like, he's not the same. The tool isn't as sharp as it used to be in the shed. I'm telling you this. I watch people, and I've seen them over the course of years. And with frequent marijuana use, it's a dangerous drug.
But my point,
Yes.
you come to my point where it's illegal to use it. And your friends who are adults are still
they're
using
it medical. They work the system.
Whatever you say, they work the system.
Yeah.
They're still using it. Teenagers have more access to it today because of the black market. So what we're all agreeing with is, and even your Republican senator,
getting me to that point where we can say.
So if you legalize it, and I'm just telling you right now, I'm going to go back and look at some research because Colorado had some of these issues you brought up in the first couple of years. They solved many of them. In fact, new industry started because of these issues. New industry started some of these issues. So my point is we now can bring back and we can control. So everything you're bringing up, I don't disagree with you. We have it right now in a black market.
But if we rush to legalize.
But when you say rush, we've been looking at this for 20 years.
Okay, but
by the way,
opinion,
New Mexico had, my father in 1978 signed the Medical Marijuana Act. In 1978, we had a research act for 10 years using medical marijuana for 10 years.
Yeah.
We've actually, in UNM's, you just said 16 years, we've actually been studying this for 40 years in the state of New Mexico.
And what they found is that it's devastating psychologically.
And has marijuana gone away?
No.
And now you have a third of the people in prison because of marijuana possession.
But see,
it ruins people's lives.
That
It ruins people's lives.
That I can acquiesce on. I'm fine. decriminalize, but when we talk about just legalizing recreational marijuana, and we're headed down the path of the Seattles and the Californias, and you look at the mess these states are in, and you have to wonder, as bad as our state is now, educationally, poverty-wise, and it's run rampant right now.
Any one of those states you mentioned have great educational programs, not because of marijuana.
Well, they already had the infrastructure.
You can't lump that in. And you look at smaller cities around Colorado; they have flourished with this.
Well,
look, I don't know. Let's summarize real quick.
Okay.
I don't know if we're going to meet in the middle on this. I think today's
show.
show.
I'm getting there.
Well,
I'm getting there because I think to Mark Moore's point is, how can we damage? It's not going away. Young people are smoking it. They're doing it. If you're a parent out there, I highly recommend Trust But Verify, and we'll talk a little bit more about that,
Right.
because there's a high probability that your great teenager may have already tried it.
Oh, I'm sure.
And
60-70% of high school kids have tried it.
Just like booze,
But again, we talked about those roadblocks and stuff. So anyway, I think a great topic today. We'll be back right after this message from our sponsors.
Try to get some ideas behind this thing.
I'm Ben Lucero, president and owner of Indigo Mortgage. We are a locally owned and operated mortgage company right here in New Mexico. This means your loan officers and processors are right here to serve you. Indigo Mortgage offers better rates and terms than that of big banks and out-of-state lenders. Our mortgage divisions include residential, commercial, construction, reverse mortgages, and VA mortgage loans. Let us serve you with an exemplary level of care. Indigo Mortgage, because nobody cares more about your mortgage loan.
Ryan Sewing and Vacuum is New Mexico's #1 brother dealer. Brother's new Luminaire has a built-in projection system which helps with quilting, embroidering, and sewing. Ryan's has a variety of machines to satisfy quilters, sewers, embroiders, and long armors. We offer the finest vacuums like Miele, Riccar, and Lindhaus. Check out our fantastic selection of fabrics and sewing furniture. We also offer classes, repair, and financing. Drop by our store in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. Ryan Sewing and Vacuum, serving New Mexico for 37 years.
Welcome back to Let's Meet in the Middle. Jeff Apodaca, Eric Strauss.
I have a headache.
I have more. How do you have a headache? Everything.
I don't know, because you're so vocal sometimes, and even our audio manager says you're too loud on the microphone.
Oh, stop!
But
I just have a loud.
But I think, look,
I'm these youngest
I
of
think
7.
to wrap up today's show, I think it's a good topic. This topic's not going to go away. I think we have a task force that's looking at this. I think we have Republicans that are looking at this.
And the task force that went complete different direction than
what the
legislators wanted it
bills,
to go. Just to make that point, by the way.
Right, and so it doesn't sound like our 2 legislators that were on today are going to be.
Well,
they don't seem real positive.
What happened is Michelle Lujan Grisham, in her never-ending wisdom, probably took something that they could have come to the middle on and now have polarized it again.
Well, and again,
which doesn't make sense to me. Why, if you had people working together, why put a task force together when you've got bipartisan support of legislation?
Because really, all they had to do.
There was no need for the task force.
Is John Arthur Smith, who oversees finance. All they have to do is have a subcommittee or a committee, a public hearing for finance. That's all they have to do.
Okay.
So they had that bill. That's all they had to do for that. So, look, this is going to be a continuous conversation.
To be continued. We may have to do another one.
But I think hopefully,
I can come to the middle on. Okay, let's not criminalize. If we're going to legalize, let's have some honest conversation about the dangers of marijuana.
Right.
Go ahead. Go.
Well, and I think we've all agreed with that, and I think that's the biggest part of it. And so, look, don't forget, you can always follow us on Facebook. We want to make sure that you guys jump in on the conversation. I'm trying to respond to some of you guys. You can follow us on Let's Meet in the Middle on Facebook.
Go out and make a difference in the world.
And hey, New Mexico, never give up and always find a way. God bless you.
Good job, man.